Okay, welcome to Seeds. I'm your host, Christine.
I'm Tracy.
And we'd like to welcome you to the Seeds program, where the main purpose of our show is to really talk about and show how we are all more alike than we are different. There's many things in our society. There's race, there's age, there's class, there's gender. There's so many things that seem to separate us and give us this illusion that we are more different than we are not. But the main theme of this program is to show how, in fact, we are all more alike, yeah. And how, because of that, we actually have a responsibility to each other in order for our own growth and development. At the end of the day, I think we're in understanding we're more alike. We are all one. All right, so today we would like to talk about
motherhood.
Motherhood, in keeping with the fact that Mother's Day is coming up. We would like to talk about Mother's Day, motherhood, and in a broader sense, parenting altogether. So, as for me, I am not a mother. I don't have any biological children. But I am certainly very, very tied and passionate about the growth and development of children, and am very, very tied into my responsibility to the growth and development of any child that I come across. You are
I am a happy mom.
You're a happy mom. That's great. Maybe tell us and the viewers a little bit about your experience as a mom and what motherhood means to you.
Well, I had my daughter very late in life, but she was the best miracle that could have ever happened to me. Me personally, I think I was born to be a mom. I was born to be a mother. It's the greatest experience of my life. The greatest experience of my life.
Like the single most greatest experience.
It's the greatest experience of my life.
Why?
Becoming a mom.
So prior to being a mom, what would you and probably a lot of people have looked at it as being, let's say, a great experience in your life, and then what was the significant difference in terms of?
It's because for me, it was finding the ultimate connection on this planet, which I think is through being a parent. For me, it's the ultimate connection. Like, I didn't understand unconditional love until I had a child.
Until you had a child.
Until I had a child. Up until that point, I would have said, okay, that's a fairy tale. But I absolutely understand it now.
You understand it?
Yeah, and that's what because I mean, like, from the moment I found out that I was pregnant, there was an instant connection. Instantly. And possibly even before I knew I was.
Yeah.
I think that, she's just, I feel like she's always just been a part of me.
And how, okay, so now you're finding this unconditional love, you're discovering it. And that's a term that, again, I don't know if it's a universal understanding that people have when they think about that, but what did now finding unconditional love, how did that change you as a person? How did unconditional love affect you as an individual?
I think that it calmed me down a lot in my life. I was a lot more cantankerous before I had her. It also made me realize there's so much more to life than what I thought there was. It really, it helped to wake me up to the connection with not just my child, but with other people.
With other people.
With a deeper meaning and a deeper feeling.
And probably with God, right?
Oh, always, but it's always with Him. It's like, for me, it was like, when she came, it was like He translated Himself through her, to her, like, into her, you know what I mean? Like, not that I worship her like God, but
it's love.
It's that love, yeah, it's like He gave me a physical, like, I think I wrote a few years ago on her birthday that she is the embodiment of my heart. Like, she owns it and embodies it. And I don't think I fully had that experience before.
You know, when you said that, I was just reminded. I remember when you and I first, for those of you who don't know, Tracy and I we've in the last 3 years we've become like sisters.
Yeah.
It's truly like a sister.
Knew each other for
bond.
many years, but
we knew each other for a lot of years, but we didn't. Our sisters were best friends in high school, but Tracy and I, we weren't.
Yeah.
We didn't really
Hi-bye.
hang around and stuff like that. We met each other later on in life, but I remember specifically when we did meet, and probably within the first week of you talking, you were talking, and every time you speak about your daughter, you just light up.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, you really do. But I remember you used a term, and I'd never heard it said like this before, and I just loved it. I don't know if you remember, but I'm going to remind you.
I remember, yeah.
And you said, and I thought it was the sweetest thing I'd ever heard, and you said, "That little girl is my heart running around."
Yes.
She is my heart running around. And I thought, wow,
she's my heart on the outside of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of people, a lot of mothers, a lot of fathers who will be able to relate to what you're saying in terms of that connection and that love. And I think for someone who hasn't had children, especially as a woman and you're in this society, there's from the time you're little, you hear about these fairy tale stories or whatever it is, and you get married and you have children and you whatever. So that's another topic we can talk about is women who don't have children and how they sort of work that out. There's some who knew from a long time that they didn't want to have children.
Yes.
And for the ones who did, how they've processed that. But so there's a lot of people who I think can relate to all that you're saying. I think as much as I want to talk about mothers and fathers, it's more about parenting, because there's an ugly side to this.
Yes.
There's an ugly side to this that is less talked about, and I think for the purpose of what we're trying to do here in the show, we really want to talk about the responsibility that we have to children in society, and when our parenting styles or how we show up in our children's lives, how that has such a huge impact and effect on our children.
Yes.
I mean, there's a broad spectrum. It goes from, discipline to outright total abuse of children. And maybe you can speak about how you parent and conscious parenting.
I think with parenting, period, it is per the child, because each child's an individual in that sense. And for me, like some people, I'm very lucky to have a child who's very understanding, where you could talk to her and you can reason with her. Even at her young age, she can be reasoned with. I understand there is sometimes necessary, for some parents, maybe it's necessary for corporal punishment, but it's just, where do you draw the line? Like me personally, I'm lucky enough that I don't have to, because I can talk to her and she gets it.
And see, I want to say this to you, because when I hear you say that, you've said, I'm lucky to have a child who I can talk to her. And only because I see the way you interact with your daughter, you didn't frame it this way, but I also say to myself, if you weren't the type of parent that you've been to her, would she have been that same little girl that you're able to talk to in the way that she is?
You know what? Well, of course, it's how I think.
And I'm glad that you see her as this. She's the type of. But I have to ask, how much of that is directly related to how respectful you have been to her as an individual, how encouraging you have been for her to be able to express her thoughts in a safe environment, in an environment like. Do you know what I mean?
No, I absolutely understand what you mean, and I think that I can't speak for every parent, but I think when it goes too far with abusive behavior, whether it's emotional abuse or physical, I think that parents, I don't know for sure, but I'm thinking that those parents don't connect with their child as another human being. I think they can, and that they have their own thought process, and they have to,
in some ways, in a way, maybe it's my child. Like,
exactly. It's
like
a
property in a way.
A possession, exactly. And
many people probably wouldn't admit that, although they act that way and they parent out of that mentality.
You're mine. You have to do what I say.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I try. There are some things don't worry. I have my parameters around her as well. But for the most
Barriers
part,
are good
yeah,
though.
yeah.
Like, yeah.
You have
they're
to have
needed.
them.
Yeah.
But I think that, and I'm not saying everyone. I believe everyone believes they have a connection with their child, but I just think that some don't recognize them as their own person, and you have to help develop their way of thinking as well.
That's huge because yeah, like you almost have to, in my opinion, what I don't see how, and I'm only speaking within the population. Unfortunately, I have been around, unfortunately, a lot of children who have been abused.
Yeah.
I had worked for a period of time on the with the Peel Crisis Line where I was doing some intake calls, and there was young, at this point they're young teenagers, and who, you know, it's a great resource for them to have, but who have either been abused on some level, either sexually abused, and that's the ugly side of it, where they really didn't have, you know, the conscious, call it parenting, and the conscious sort of role models, and then you see the effects that these children end up having, where it's low self-esteem and low sense of worth and value. They're trying to scramble around, even trying to understand what love actually is, because it's so skewed, you know, in and then that has a whole bunch of different effects in the course of their life. They might be trying to find love in the wrong areas, in the wrong places, and then they themselves become abusers as well, in mimicking
what they were taught
and mirroring their parents or the people that they were exposed to. Yeah, there's a young girl who, she's actually running for Miss World Canada. Her name is Moni, and she's actually a huge voice right now for abuse. Abuse on all levels, physical abuse, sexual abuse, any form of abuse, and it's huge. It's huge.
It's unfortunately it's more prevalent than we think.
It really is.
And that's what's so frightening about it, and that's why I think that this topic is a very serious one, even though it was supposed to be kind of lighthearted. But I think a lot of people have to look in the mirror when it comes to their child to make sure that what they are doing is helping that child, is actually helping them to grow positively. Because eventually, like you were saying earlier, eventually they are going to be, well, they are part of society, but eventually they're going to be putting their mark in society. We want to make them put a positive mark.
Truthfully?
Yeah.
And I know what you're saying, as leaders of society, but even in their own right now as citizens, when they're in school, when they're interacting with other people, their peers, they're having an impact even right now.
Even probably more so importantly in the development years, because that's who they're going to, what they learn during those years is what sticks with them and what they become.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So and someone once said to me that a child's mind is like a sponge, a dry sponge, and anything you put on it, it's going to soak it up. It's going to soak. So you have to be very careful about what you're putting into that mind.
Very conscious, like really conscious.
Yes, and maybe take a step back and say, how is this helping them?
That's a beautiful. That right there is, if you can, my gosh, if you can do that, and really, that speaks. That to me is a great approach for when you're dealing with children. How am I helping them? It's also, though, if you can incorporate that into your own being, you wouldn't be only applying that to children. You'd be applying that to every single member of society that you come in contact with. How am I helping you?
Yes.
How am I helping you?
Yes. Yeah, and I would also say that even beyond parenting, I think that every adult in society has a responsibility to children.
Yes.
Every adult has a responsibility
to every child.
To every child, and to protect and steer them as well in the right way.
So do I.
You can't just act like, because that's not my child, I don't care. We have to care about all of them. What was that you're telling me about? It takes a village to raise a child.
Yes, yes.
And I know you're talking about some utopian society you read about.
Yeah, I can't remember where I read this, but it was, and I don't remember if the author was actually, you know what? It was that Conversations with God thing. And I don't know if it, I can't recall because it was so many years ago that I read that book, if it was sort of set up as an analogy or if they were saying that this is how certain societies operate somewhere else. But in understanding that we do, it, to your point, that we take this attitude when we have children, that they are ours. And as soon as somebody comes and says, you know, there might be a better way that you could handle that with your child, it's like, listen, that's my child, stay out of it, this is my kid, this is my whatever, right? But they were speaking about this society that exists where, and I mean, it's a model, right? Where there are people, women, let's say, who they have the children, and they understand that their role in this particular society is to have the child. From the time even of conception, they're not in this space of this is my child. And once the child is born, the child is then placed in a family. There was even a movie actually that sort of spoke to this too, right? But the child, that child, is then placed in a family that would care for that child, but it's the entire village that is nurturing and involved in that child. But there's is so not a sense of ownership that this is my child. I think that what, like I said, I'm not a parent, and I think in many ways it's by not being a parent, by not having, I know that once you have children, for the most part, your entire world is focused on that child. Everything becomes about that child. And I think because everything becomes about that child, what happens, I think, with a lot of parents is they stop focusing on their own personal growth and development. But it is necessary because your own personal growth and development, gaining new perspective, having a new vantage point will only serve your child better. Because if you're 15 years old and you have a child, and all of a sudden you stop growing as a person because you are focusing everything on feeding, clothing, whatever it is, this child, you're coming from a 15-year-old mentality, and who knows what you were exposed to for the first 15 years of your life to know what you're now putting into your child. We have a responsibility to ensure that we are growing spiritually so that we can continue to be offering that form of love, that form of nurturing to our children. And I know it's easier said than done. You know, I know it's easier said than done, but it is so essential. We have to start looking at this child, look at what their strengths are. And a lot of the times, parents, like you said, they blanket parent. It's like a blanketing parenting style. You have to get to know your children.
You have to know your children and connect with them in every way.
Based on who they are.
Yes.
So that you can draw out all of those wonderful, beautiful elements of who they are. And I don't know if how much of that is being done. And I do. I look at that as conscious parenting. Conscious parenting.
Which I think it's necessary for society.
And if we can do that, not only do the children benefit, we do, because we're now learning from them.
You'd be surprised. Sometimes children are the best teachers you'll ever have because they think with such an innocent scope. Before,
they just came from ultimate source.
So maybe they remember a lot more than we do before the world sets
the purity. They just hatched. They just came from intimate, ultimate source, from God. You know? If that is not the greatest teacher right there, and then what we do is we decide, oh no, you know, don't like black people, and you know, we put all these
that in them.
I saw this thing. It was really sweet. It was just to your point where you were saying that kids are like sponges. There was this baby, and I'm assuming that the parents worked as trainers for CPR and first aid. I don't know if you saw it. It was on Facebook, and you saw this. You know how they have those dummies for first aid CPR training, those little torso men, right? They had a video of this baby. Like the baby must have been maybe 1 or 1.5 years old, and they had the torso on the ground, You see this baby crawl up to the torso and start doing this to the torso, and then going over to the mouth of the torso. So clearly that child, even just in its young
state,
was observing whatever the examples were in front of them, their behavior.
Yep.
And this child was trying to save the poor torso's life. Now, the child might not have known that it was saving a life, but it was mimicking and mirroring what those adults.
So important.
It was amazing. They're truly sponges.
They pick up everything you think. Even when you think they're not watching, or paying attention, they are paying attention. They are.
Yeah, we have such a huge. They are blessings and they are gifts. And I mean, this is not news to anybody. Anybody would agree with the statements that I'm saying. Yeah. It's just, I don't know. In fact, I'm going to even say, I know, based on the abuses that happen, based on a lot of these young children, and I've just seen countless of them, who have been affected, and I know parents, they try as hard as they can. I know things are tough. I know things are rough. But I'm going to tell you something right now. If you know that you've got an anger issue, because a lot of the times you're disciplining and you're saying it's discipline, but you've lost control.
Yes.
You have lost control. Yeah. Like, you know the difference. When you've lost control and you don't know what you're doing, and you're feeling better because you're letting off steam, but if it's on your child, don't you dare call that discipline.
No, that's not.
Don't you even dare lie to yourself and call that discipline.
It's not. It's abuse.
Discipline, you are in full control. Yes. You are of clear mind. You know exactly what you are administering to your child.
Yes. And like I also said, there are some children that you don't have to even physically discipline. If you take the time to know them. I find most children are wise enough to understand what you're saying just by speaking to them.
I personally am of the opinion that if you're doing your job right from the very beginning, you wouldn't have to physically use physical.
Don't get me wrong, not my child, but there are some children that I've been around my whole life, or almost my whole life. That I'm not saying that I agree with everything, but there are some children. But you're right. Actually, it does come down to the parenting.
That's what I was going to say. What was that child exposed to?
Exactly.
Was that child exposed to a lot of arguing and fighting around them during? Did they pick up aggression along the way? Did they? So we don't, right? The sponges, right? We don't know what they absorbed.
Very true.
In terms of what they're acting out right now, right? So we really, really don't.
And I'd also like to say, for the younger ones that might be considering having a child, understand that it comes with as beautiful as an experience that is, it comes with so much responsibility. Even me as a grown woman who desperately wanted a child and had a child, it's still a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And I think a lot of people, especially the younger ones, think that I hate to say it, but it's the truth. So from what I see, some of them look at them as almost like an accessory. You know what I mean? They look at their child as like an accessory. They're not toys. Okay?
But that speaks to the immaturity for them to even know any better.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
It speaks to, in many, and I'm not gonna blame every individual experience on everyone's parents. But I think collectively on a whole, it might speak to, again, what that young 16-year-old was exposed to.
Exactly.
And maybe more importantly, what they weren't exposed to as well.
Yes.
In their lives, like positive.
Absolutely, and that's what I think. And they themselves technically are children as well. But other than that, all I can say is being a mom has been the greatest experience of my life. I saw the most beautiful thing that summed up what being a mother is, and I hope the tape makes it. But there was a woman who she found out she had stage 3 cancer, breast cancer, and had to have a mastectomy on her left breast, but she was pregnant at the time. And then when the baby was born, it came out totally healthy, and she had a photographer there film everything, and the baby, as soon as they put the baby on her chest, it immediately started to suckle. And she's crying. Like, I feel like I'm going to cry right now because it's the most, to me,
I want to see that.
The strength that picture just epitomized motherhood to me.
Yeah.
No matter what struggles you're going through, when you become a mom, it takes over. It supersedes everything, no matter what. And she had stage 3 cancer, but she did everything she could to survive, to make sure that that child survived.
Yeah,
and now I think
beautiful.
I'm praying for her, and that she's going to continue to fight to watch her child grow.
That's beautiful.
It's the most beautiful. I'm going to try and find it so we can post it under the link to look at this and read her story. But it's just the most, to me, it's summed up motherhood. Summed it up.
I got to take a look at that. I just want to say that, you know, the role of motherhood and fatherhood and
even if you don't have children.
okay, so
Even
aunt, uncle, friend, neighbor, everything. Those are important roles that we assume. But I got to say this, and if there's anything that I can say from what I've seen, is that these children, they need you. You're the primary roles in their lives. They understand and begin to understand what love is, what their sense of value is, what their sense of worth is, who they are in relationship. Everything that they're picking up about themselves and about the world around them is coming directly from you. And to the extent that you fall short, now I got to say this, we all make mistakes, but if we consciously know that there is something in us that needs work, if we know that we have, like I said, short fuses, if we know that there's things within us as adults, and if you've never heard this before and you're hearing it now, then take heed, because if you are out there parenting children and you know that there's something in you that is not good or conducive to the nurturing and development of your child or any children that you are around. Like our last show, ignorance is bliss. But when you are choosing to be ignorant now, you have a responsibility to get yourself straight, fill your cup up so it's full of all that great, beautiful stuff, so that it can then overflow onto your children. Too many children are suffering because we are turning a blind eye to the work that needs to be done within ourselves. Too many children are suffering and are confused and are abandoned and feel betrayed and are totally lost in our society because we have not fixed and taken the responsibility to fix ourselves. And maybe we haven't done it because we haven't known, because we've been lost. If you're listening to this, examine yourself. Examine the areas of your life where you have messed up your life or you've ruined relationships because of certain aspects of your life. Begin to examine those things, if not for yourself, for this human being, for this soul that God has placed in your in your hands. You're the custodian. You are the custodian of these children. So please, and you'll only be better for it. You know, you'll only be better for it, because at the end of the day, the last thing we need is to have children out there having to wonder if their parents love them. Having to wonder, was it really love? Was I not good enough? What's wrong with me? Was I not lovable? Am I not lovable? And then going out into the world, it gets me really...
it's heartbreaking.
It gets me really upset. We know you love your children. Okay, so as we were saying, you know, it goes without saying that you love your children. It goes without saying that, you know what, if anybody were to come up to your child and hurt your child, and that you would do anything to protect your child. The question is are you protecting your child from you? Are you protecting your child from what you are giving to your child? Because at the end of the day, there could be 10 strangers doing something to your child, and it's not going to impact them as much as your action impacts them. You know, so love your children enough to improve on yourself. And when they see you doing that, you then teach them about how they can take action on improving on themselves as individuals. You teach them about growth, and you teach them about development. And you know what? And there's nothing wrong in apologizing to your children. There's everything right. If you've done something wrong, if you've offended them, if you've insulted them, if you've hurt them, if you've anything, there's everything right in you apologizing to your child, because you're teaching them, one, by example, that when you do something wrong to another, you take accountability. And secondly, you're also teaching them that they are important enough, they are valued enough, that they...
And that they matter. They mean something. They matter. And their opinions matter. And
that their feelings matter.
Everything matters. You need to let them know that they belong and they matter. It's our job to make sure they know they belong, not theirs.
And just because you're their parent, that doesn't mean and give you the right or the license to do anything you want to them.
Yep.
Especially, I'm going to say it right out, especially if you're abusive.
Yes.
And you need to understand what that is. And if you don't understand what that is, get a book, get help, learn to make sure. Again, we don't know. Some of us, we don't know what we don't know. Sometimes we're parenting out of how we were parented. And therefore we feel that that is correct. I would say 9 times out of 10, it probably isn't correct. At least there's certain adjustments that you can absolutely make. And if you don't know, make it your business to know, because you have a child of God in your midst, you know, and you are responsible for that child. So,
and I'd also like to add that, yes, a lot of people don't know. They might not have an idea, but I'm sure that they have close friends that have probably made comments. They probably had family members that have probably made comments. Pay attention. And I'm sure that even the children might have spoken to family members, and that's why the family member is making comments. Pay attention to what people tell you where your children are concerned. At least examine whatever they are saying. If there's any kind of truth in it, then do the work. Do the work. If there's any kind of truth, if there's even a slight, instead of just pushing it off and saying you don't know what you're talking about, do the work, even if you have to do it internally by yourself, to make sure that their claims are unfounded. Because if they're founded, then you have some work to do, and you have the first thing, you can't fix a problem until you recognize there's a problem.
Yeah. I personally am going to be much more involved in this area of abuse in my life, because I think it's really, really important. I have seen so many children, girls and boys, who are wounded, broken, and they need a voice. They really do need a voice, and it's a really important cause. So I really do applaud Moni for what she's doing. She's a survivor of abuse, and now she's, you know what, honestly, when I think about things even in my life, the things that she's taken on, if I had the strength back then,
same here.
You know, I probably could have had a much more impact, much more of a positive impact on this whole issue as well. So, yes.
Just remember, sorry.
Go ahead, honey, go ahead.
Just remember, broken children become broken adults.
Oh.
And that's what society has to deal with, is the broken adult.
And I'll tag on to that. Hurt people hurt people. So if you are hurting someone, chances are it's because you are hurting.
Yes.
And you know what? If you are, then seek the help and the support that you need, because the quality of your life, and I'm all about quality of life, will improve so greatly if you end up dealing and mending those hurts within yourself, and then it wouldn't be transferred on to not just your children, because chances are if you're hurting your children, you're probably hurting other people in society that you don't even know, other family members, friends, co-workers, just people on the street, you know, that you don't even realize. So this show, hopefully it really is about we are all one, we are all connected, we are all connected, and we have a responsibility to each other. To the degree that you grow, I grow.
Yes.
To the degree that you fail, we fail.
Yeah.
You know, to the degree that I fail, you fail. So we are really connected, and we really want to pass that message on, because it's a very, very important vital message to the involvement of humanity, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely agreed.
So with that, happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day, Mama, and all the mamas.
And happy Mother's Day to my mother as well, and to all the mothers that have...
And happy Mother's Day to my beautiful daughter for making me a mom.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay, good. So,
and we would like to know what seeds you're going to plant today.